Okay. This is straight question, guys. What's the difference between RAM and ROM? So we discussed about a processor. The next one is primary memories. Two primary memories. One is RAM, another one is ROM. So RAM and ROM are primary memories. RAM, random access memory. ROM, read-only memory. RAM data stores temporarily. RAM stores data temporarily. The ROM data is permanent data. What are the data inside your ROM chip? It is permanent data. Okay. RAM is an example of volatile memory. RAM is an example of volatile memory. Meaning is, if you shut down your system, then data in the volatile memory device will be gone automatically, completely gone. Non-volatile memory devices. The data won't be deleted or lost even if you shut down the system. Example, hard disk, SSDs, pen drives, SD cards, whatever the data you store it. Whether you connect or disconnect, you power off the system, still data available inside these devices, right? So RAM is a volatile memory, ROM is a non-volatile memory. RAM is a permanent memory, ROM is a ROM is permanent, RAM is temporary memory storage. So here is a point, guys. Someone put a comment in the YouTube, that is, what is the ROM size? Okay. Here's the thing is, this RAMs, we can add additional RAM to your existing RAM, or you remove the existing RAM if in case it's not working. You can replace the RAM of existing RAM with a new RAM. Okay, means you can increase your RAM size. You can decrease your RAM size, increase your RAM size. You can, in case RAM is not working, you can replace the RAM with other new working RAM. Okay, you can add an additional RAM to increase your RAM capacity also. So that is a RAM. Coming to the ROM, ROM is a fixed chip on your motherboard. You can't remove it and replace it directly. Okay, you can't increase the ROM sizes. So when this motherboard manufacturing, that time only the main instructions and data put it in a ROM. So it's our data is not storing inside. It contains already data, so that is always available like that. Okay, so this is RAM and ROM differences. So this is one of the important. And we'll discuss about a RAM. Then ROM contains little bigger. Out of all components, ROM is little bigger. Why? Because ROM, I have to explain about BIOS and BIOS settings, CMOS battery. Okay, so we'll see that one. RAM, again, random access memory, also called as main memory or physical memory. RAM stores data temporarily. For example, I open a picture like see, this is task manager is running. If I close this task manager, for example, if I close this task manager, this is the task manager consuming this 80 MB RAM. If I close it, that much space is become available. This is a tab, it is open. See the tab? This tab also takes some RAM. Okay, this tab contains information, the data, application, it stores in your RAM. If you close it, it will be gone from your RAM. Okay, we'll see here from the performance side, CPU. See the right now availability RAM is 4 GB. My total RAM is 16 GB. The available RAM is 4 GB only. Why it is? What happened to remaining 12 GB RAM? It is taken by your operating system, background processor, your applications also. If you close it, that will be removed from your RAM, even system is running. Once your system is shut down, entire data in the RAM will be clean. Okay. if application is running, for example, if I close this, so that the calculator application and data will be cleaned from your RAM. Okay, the number of browser tabs are open here. Once you close it, so obviously some tabs I closed it. So that tab related application data will become available. See 4.9 GB available, 5 GB available, 1 GB increased. Even you can close these tabs also. If you close this one, okay, so more RAM will be available. So that application data is removed from the RAM automatically. So while system is running, different applications utilize your system, your operating system, the background of operating system applications, operating system background processors, and foreground processor applications is utilizing your RAM space. Okay. So RAM stores data temporarily. Okay. You open an application, that application related data stores in RAM. You close it, it will gone. So like that. To shut down your system, data will be clean from your RAM. So RAM is a volatile memory, example of volatile memory, which is required power to store the data. Next. Okay, what is the RAM? Next, different RAM models also. So RAM, different types. Static RAM, dynamic RAM. So RAM, two types, static RAM, dynamic RAM. The static RAMs are pure form of transistor they are using inside. So then it is a very high speed RAM. It's used as a cache memory, which is built inside our CPU. When you are checking about CPU specifications, so you have to check the cache memory, CPU cache memory, right? L3 cache memory, L1 cache memory. The cache memory, which is nothing but cache memory. Okay, the cache memory or cache memory, which is nothing but your SRAM only, static RAM only, which is built inside your CPU. You can't increase or decrease, it's a CPU related. Next, another type of RAM is dynamic RAM. That RAMs actually we are inserting and removing from your system, right? That's a dynamic RAMs. In this dynamic RAMs also, like a example, DRAMs. Okay, different DRAMs also available. Okay, what direct RAM we are using on the system is like a dynamic RAM, DRAM. These DRAMs are further developed, means some more additional things are added. So it has become synchronous dynamic RAM. Then synchronous dynamic RAM further developed into DDR, double data rate synchronous dynamic RAM. Then DDR2, DDR3, DDR4, DDR5 also came into the market. Okay, this DDR right now in the market, we are having DDR5 and DDR4 RAMs are there. Depends upon your processor. We use either DDR5 or DDR4 or DDR3, depends upon your processor model. Okay, so currently what RAMs we are using? DDR4 as well as DDR5. So these are the RAM models. RAM specifications. What do you see in the RAM? RAM size is a very important. Important thing is RAM sizes. Higher the RAM capacity, faster the performance. For example, in my laptop, I have a 16 GB RAM. In case if I have a 32 GB RAM, better performance. If I have a 64 GB RAM, much better performance compared to 16 GB RAM, right? Means higher the RAM capacity, more applications it can be load, more applications it can able to run, more virtual machines also you can able to run in case you are having a more RAM capacities. Along with RAM capacity, the processor capacity, storage capacity also must be higher. Okay, not only RAM capacity, guys, but the RAM capacity itself, once you higher the RAM, better performance. Okay, the RAMs are available nowadays is GBs only. GBs and TBs availability is there. Okay, so most of our desktop laptops GB wise, like 2 GB, 4 GB, 8 GB, 16 GB, 32 GB RAMs are available. Okay, next. RAM also having a clock speed. The clock speed of RAM. Generally, it shows in the megahertz wise. 133 megahertz, 1600 megahertz, 2100, 2400, okay, 2666, 3200, 3400, 4200. So like that, different speed of the RAMs are, so clock speed of the RAM. Okay. And RAM models, of course, DDR3, DDR4, DDR5, different RAM models, what RAM model you are using, and voltage level. RAM depends upon where you use. Like for desktop, generally 3 volts operating voltage. For laptop, generally 1.5 volt means it's a low voltage wattage rating. Low voltage rating is there. Okay. These are RAM specifications. Okay. Next, you want to upgrade or replace the RAM. How to do it? You have a desktop or maybe a laptop. You got a faulty RAM, and maybe your RAM capacity is lower. You want to increase the RAM capacity, or you want to replace the RAM. How to do it? Okay, how to do it? So RAM, it depends upon two factors. One is CPU model specifications. Next is motherboard specifications. Based on CPU, how much RAM size you can able to use. What RAM speed or models we can able to use. Okay. So for example, based on already I showed one processor. You go to the processor, their details from the website. For example, you take a processor, new processor, simple i5, 13th generation processor. Okay. 134 processor. You can take some example 13 generation processor. Instead of telling my processor, I'm showing this 13. So see the cache memory and maximum speed, turbo speed, base speed, turbo speed also you can see. And number of cores, number of threads, totally 14 core processor it is. Okay. But I said, how much RAM? You can use up to 192 GB RAM. Last time I showed that is 64 GB RAM support. So my system is Intel i5 10th generation processor. Maximum RAM support is 64. For example, if I use this processor, 13, okay, so 13 generation processor, okay, that model specifically 13600K processor. So what is the maximum RAM support is 1.92 GB. And it support DDR5 with a clock speed of 600 megahertz. Or you can use DDR4 3200 megahertz. 2 RAM slots it will support. So of course other details are there, but what do you say? You want to add a RAM or you want to increase your RAM capacities. What is the total RAM support is there? What type of RAM frequency support required? Support is there. Okay. What model of RAM it is support? Second one is motherboard. On motherboard only you are inserting RAM. So number of slots on the RAM availability. So in my laptop, already 16 GB RAM is there. If I want to add two more RAMs, so I want to add one more 16 GB. So it will become 32 GB. My laptop support up to 64 GB. The laptop up to support up to 64 GB. The processor which is Intel 10th generation processor. This model support up to 64 GB. Already 16 GB is there. Can I add one more 16 GB? You see? So total number of slots are 2. So 2 of 2 are completed. Means in my laptop, 2 slots are there, RAM slots. Both slots are full. Means 8 plus 8 GB it is. Okay, it's 16 GB. How it is 16 GB? 8 plus 8. 2 RAM slots, 2 RAM slots. One, both are 8 GB, 8 GB full. Now we got a 16 GB RAM system. Okay. So I don't have any additional slot. If I have additional slot, so then I can insert one more RAM. Otherwise, what I have to do, remove both RAMs, insert one 16 plus 16 or 32 directly. 16 plus 16 or 32 directly we can insert it. So either way, like that. So it just depends upon your RAM slots and memory type. On motherboard, it will support the specific RAM models only. If a motherboard support is a desktop or laptop, guys, if motherboard support is DDR4, means you can insert a DDR4 RAM only. The motherboard support DDR5 means you can insert DDR5 only. The motherboard support DDR3, you can install DDR3 only. You can't install DDR4 instead of DDR3. So motherboard specifications like number of slots, memory type specification also you have to verify. And also verify this on the what kind of processor will RAM voltage levels support, also check it based on CPU and motherboard, like voltage level, low voltage, high voltage kind of stuff. Matches to old RAM or not. Better it is, check the frequency. Frequency matching is there are between the RAMs. You are adding two RAMs means check the frequency between them. And also better is check with your old RAM and do the upgradation or replacement based on the old existing RAM only. Example, I have old laptop. It's the laptop with a 4 GB RAM. But I have a lot of work with my system. Mainly, I have to run multiple virtual machine for my practice. That time I do this active means Windows servers practice, Linux practices. Okay, lot of things we do like practice and classes teach. The 4 GB RAM not supporting to run this multiple virtual machine. So add extra 8 GB. So what we have done, we take it to the service centers. And before that, when I open my laptop back cover and take a picture of this RAM, existing RAM, and search it like what is the voltage and what kind of RAM it is. And also check my processor. It's a third generation processor, I think it is 3660, 3660, 3650, third generation i5 processor. So maximum support is 16 GB only. Okay. So what I done, I take into the service center and ask for the new RAM. Yeah, some questions. What kind of RAM you need? Okay, how about capacity? What is the model? What model RAM you required? What is the voltage level? So because already I know my old RAM, so I told that the details. So then he given the matched RAM. Okay, the matching, and also based on the processor, it asked what kind of generation it is. Third generation. So third generation means support up to 16 GB. Similarly, same thing it is happened to my brother's laptop. So i7 processor. The laptop also contains 4 GB RAM only. So you need to install the SolidWorks application. It need at least 10 GB RAM capacity. Same, we check with the old RAM and buy a new RAM which is matched with the old RAM only. Okay, from old RAM only maximum you will get a details. Okay, that is how to add or how to increase your RAM capacity or how to replace the RAM also. Your RAM is not working, you want to replace and put a new RAM. Also, you have to follow this kind of stuff. Don't worry, guys. We have 3 points. 1, 2, and last one is very important, troubleshooting point. In a processor, one troubleshooting we discuss. What is that? System restart itself again and again. Okay. So why it is restarting again and again? One of the possibilities, CPU is getting overheated. CPU is getting overheated. Why? CPU is getting overheated. Okay. Either on the CPU, heat sink paste not applied properly or cleaned, heat sink full of the dust, heat sink fan not running. So our heat sink is not placed properly. So the heat is processing, generating lot of heat. Okay, the heat is not absorbed, so it is become overheated. Once it is become overheated, it will going to be damaged. To prevent it from damaging our processor system, restarting itself again and again. So that is a kind of notification to you to can understand something there is a going on bad. So open the cabinet, check the processor. On the processor, heatsink properly pasted or not, heatsink fan is running or not. Any dust formation means clean the heatsink dust. Okay, clean the heatsink dust. And also, if you can open the remove the heatsink on the processor, check the heatsink paste. Okay, if not applied properly, clean the heatsink paste first and apply the heatsink paste properly and place the heatsink properly and make sure heatsink fan is connected and running. Okay, so this is the troubleshooting. One part. Here also one more issue is there. Okay, so that is also will going. Yeah. 2 points, then we'll go to the RAM related issue. Okay. RAM packages, different RAM packages also. DIP. DIP RAM package means it look like IC. Maybe in your college labs, you have seen ICs 748, 748. Yeah, right. That's the one kind of IC. 355 IC timers. Okay. It's look like a IC only. Even you take a Arduino, you know what's Raspberry. So this you can see small ICs on it. Okay. So DIP means it's a IC type of package only. So both the left side and right side we have a legs. Okay, small IC. And for computers, they started build this SIM. Initially, we have a single inline memory modules package. Now we are using dual inline memory module packages. The DIM package is used for desktop purpose. So see here it is. This is a person is inserting a RAM into the RAM slots on its motherboard. It's a desktop motherboard, desktop RAM slots, and that is a DIM RAM it is inserting DIM package RAM. So DIM RAMs are for desktop purpose. You know, that is also asked one question. Okay. So like that. So this is a desktop RAM DIM packages. Okay, inserting into system, which is look little larger than laptop RAMs. This is a laptop RAM. So this is a laptop motherboard. The RAM is inserting into the laptop. Okay. So for laptop purpose, the laptop RAM package is SODIMM, small outline dual inline memory module. Okay, this type of RAMs used for laptop purpose. So laptop RAM is different, desktop RAM is different. In between, there is a RIM, Rambus Inline Memory Modules. This RAMs is similar to DIMM only, but this RIM packages usually used for server purposes. In the servers, we use this type of RAMs because servers runs for 24/7. Okay, so a lot of load on the servers, so the RAMs can be possible damage. So what the people do is instead of using simple DIMM RAMs, they use RIM RAMs because this RIM RAMs contains a heat sink on it. Okay, it's a simply DIMM only, but with the DIMM, so there is a heat sink. What is heat sink? If RAM getting heated, RAM is also produce lot of heat. That heat will be absorbed by this heat sink, and that air rotation will cool down the RAM. And also these RIM package RAMs, we use it for a gaming systems. Because gaming, if you are playing game in the system, so a lot of heat is generated inside. So RAM, if normal RAMs may be damaged after usage for a certain period of time. So then better to use this RIM package RAM, means RAM with a heat sink. Okay. So RAM with the heat sinks, we use it for servers or gaming PCs, gaming laptops or gaming desktops. Okay. Gaming or heavy multimedia heavy application running systems, better to use heatsink RAMs. Type of dynamic RAMs, not types of dynamic RAMs, even the RAMs, sorry, the RAM also having pins. Different RAM models, different pin structure is there. And the RAM also having a notch. You see this RAM? You can see there is a small slit is there. So for example, this is a DDR3 supported motherboard. So you can insert DDR3 only. How can it is possible? Actually, you can put a DDR4 also, but you can't put it. So why? Because that pin structure is different from one RAM to another RAM, and mainly these notch points also different. So in DDR3, if the notch is here, the slit is here. In DDR4, it may be here. In DDR4, maybe it is here. Okay. If you compare physical comparison between the RAMs of different models, you can understand where is that slit point. That's called notch or a slit. Okay. So it is only suitable if you are want to insert a DDR3 into DDR4 supported motherboard. So you can't put it. Vice versa. Okay. Can't put it. And the pins also different structure. So depends upon RAM capacity increases, RAM model increases, the number of pins also increases. Okay. Hmm? Understand guys up to here? And finally, RAM related issue. It's not RAM related issue, but what happened? So based on something is happened to your RAM, what kind of issue you will get it. Okay. In case the RAM is loosely connected, RAM loose connection, improper connectivity. You're inserted RAM but not correctly inserted. So some loose connection or not inserted properly. RAM is failed. RAM is not working. Dust formation on the RAM slots. Dust formation on RAM edges, and RAM slots. So what happened? When you power on your system, nothing on the screen. Nothing on the screen, it's a blank. On screen itself, it's a blank. Nothing on the screen. Can't able to see. Not even a no signal error. Not even any kind of error. It's completely blank. You power on your system, power LED is blinking, but hard disk LED not blinking, keyboard LED is not blinking. On the monitor, nothing, no error message. Even from the starting itself, no logos, nothing is there. Just you power on and you can check it, it's powered on through this LED or power LEDs. But system is not running. So what is that? Why it is happened? If in your system any primary component failure, either RAM, CPU, or motherboard components failures occurs, you will get this kind of issue. Most of the cases, RAM related only, because when you are moving the system, either desktop, laptop, or server, when you are moving your system, even for this laptop, I got this problem so many times. Okay, so when we are moving, we're touching in the backside of your hot touching in the backside of your system, or maybe some shocks are moving your desktop or throwing your desktop aside, so that is it can be loose connectivity. dust formations, failures occurs, right? So what to do? So what is the first diagnostic? When you got this kind of error, it is RAM related, then what to do? First, remove all the power connections, either desktop or laptop. If it is desktop, remove the main power supply connection. Complete. Not just power off, remove the power cut. If it is a laptop, remove the battery also. Remove the charger, remove the battery also. Remove the cover. Okay. And see the RAM. Remove the RAM. Clean the RAM edges with eraser. Okay. So clean the dust on RAM and RAM slots. Insert the RAM and verify. Insert the RAM, connect the power supplies and verify. Working or not. Not working means cross verify the RAM may be damaged. Put with a different RAM or put this RAM into different system or put the different RAM inside. Or change the RAM slots and verify because RAM slots may be damaged. Okay. So this is issue. So what is an issue actually when you power on your system? You didn't get anything on your screen. It's a completely black screen or a blank screen. Okay. You may hear a keep continuous beep sound. Power is on, but nothing on the monitor. So mostly it is RAM loose connection. So, so we discussed two troubleshooting also. Okay. One is CPU related, another one is RAM related. And one small point, guys. So this is a diagram. You can see this is the processor, RAM, I/O controller or south bridge, and these are the I/O devices. Means your keyboard, mouse, okay, your monitor, storage devices, right? Like, okay. So you are typing something on your keyboard. So keyboard is not directly connected to your CPU. So there is I/O controller or south bridge which understand what are the input you are giving. What are the devices, I/O devices you are connected. From which device there is a information signal it is coming, information, data or something, instructions are loading. It will understand from what device and take that information and convert into system understandable and load into the RAM. Okay, your data and instructions will be loaded into your RAM. From RAM to cache memory, which is built inside your CPU, and cache memory to your CPU. CPU performs this arithmetic and logical operations on your instructions and data based on internal instructions. So once it is performed, operations completed, what are the instructions that it's completed? It put that output into the cache to RAM, RAM to your I/O controller. And I/O controller either display on the screen or maybe stores into your hard disk. This is the process it is happens. So you are not loading anything into your CPU directly. It has to go to RAM, RAM to CPU, CPU to RAM, RAM to your devices. Okay. So this is the diagram. And what is this north bridge and south bridge? North bridge is a kind of simple NIC which helps and arrange queue communication between your CPU and RAM. Okay. CPU RAM communication is very faster. Okay. CPU wait for instruction from the RAM, RAM loading instruction to the CPU. So what happened? This north bridge will help you to load instructions and RAM to CPU. CPU to RAM communication will be managed, okay, by your north bridge chip, okay, system chip it is. South bridge usually RAM to other peripherals. Peripheral means your I/O devices communication. That is will be taken care by south bridge. Okay. So general, that's why I said south bridge or I/O controller. So sometimes we use that I/O controller kind of stuff. Or we can say that is as a south bridge. So this is about your RAM. Let's understand what is the RAM. RAM and ROM differences and RAM. Some people are leaving and rejoining, okay. But tell anybody left people to be joined again. And after small break. Very small break, guys. Okay. Then I will